So I'm joined today by John Kettley, who I met on a recent 4N meeting. So yay to the 4N people there. And John was the first person I've ever heard in a professional capacity promote MLM or network marketing as a good thing to look at as a startup business. So John, welcome. And what's your background and experience? Where's your sort of focus coming from?
Okay, I've had 4 decades of building businesses to sale. That's where I've come from. So okay. If we go back a little further than that, my mother was a fine Irish lady who had 7 brothers, 5 of which were all in business. They were carpenters and butchers and so on and so on. So as a child, I grew up with a family of what they call entrepreneurs today, but we used to call the self-employed back then.
Right.
And, I kind of fell into the same thought pattern based off of that childhood. So it was a natural progression to go straight into business. I've never really had a job, a couple of months here, maybe a couple of months there, but I've always kind of walked to my own tune, as it were. So over the last 40 years, I've started, built and sold a number of companies, built multiple 7-figure businesses. It hasn't always been rosy. We've crashed and burned more than a couple of times along the way. I think, as in with most people, you start a business, you make mistakes, you learn from the mistakes, you make more mistakes, you learn from those mistakes, and eventually you get to a point where things start working because you cop on to what does and does not work. So that's really it in a nutshell. I was very fortunate. I retired from having to work, so to speak, back in 2007. No, 2008. So yeah, it took a couple of years out, and then when the recession came around, the last recession, then fell into business turnaround and mentoring others to fast track the School of Hard Knocks. So these past 10 years, that's what we've done. We've mentored businesses. I still invest in businesses that are being built to sell. Nowadays, I do a couple of roll-ups where we'll put X number of companies under a special purpose vehicle, build them up to sell them all in one go, so to speak. So,
cool. So I started my career with Lloyd's Bank back in the 80s. So saw sort of businesses from the other side, if you like, the side of not taking risk and enjoying the fruits when things were good, and sort of letting go when things got bad and say, well, you're on your own. So what do you think is the current state of the business world with the coronavirus and even before then? And what would you say to anyone who perhaps was looking to go and start up a new business?
I would say go all in and start that business. Funny enough, there's a great book called Rich Dad, Poor Dad by Archie, and highly recommend that to anyone who's not read the book. Please read the book, because what it talks about are the principles of creating a wealthy life. And that's not always necessarily about monies, but it does give you a proper understanding of how money works, and how sometimes taking the academic route and taking the route into a pay-as-you-earn career can be very, very risky. I think a lot of people look at self-employment, entrepreneurialism, starting a business is risky, and it is, but I don't think it's as risky as going down the road of employment. And what you've seen in the 2008-2012 recession was an absolute ton of people that fell out of the corporate tree because the big corporates were jettisoning people left, right, and centre. And we're actively going to see that now. I mean, if you only have to look at the media, which I don't always believe, to be perfectly clear, because they're only ever interested in maxifying a bad situation. But what we will see through COVID is a massive readjustment of the marketplace. And all of those organizations that were not financially robust coming in, and all of the organizations that really should have probably gone by the wayside over the last few years, were just hanging in by their nails, will go.
Right.
It's just nature. It's just the way of things. So I think this next 18 months is going to be pivotal for everyone to really calibrate. And I think largely that's what people have done over the last 4 or 5 months, is calibrate and say, look, am I happy doing what I'm doing? Is my future robust? Where am I in my life? You know, I've got to spend a little bit more quality time with family and so on. And I think there's a cultural shift in how people are thinking. And this is where self-employment, as opposed to employment, I think is going to flourish. And these, I firmly believe, that are the roaring 20s,
Okay.
as they were 100 years ago.
Okay. So you mentioned Robert Kiyosaki and Rich Dad Poor Dad, which is a fantastic book. And we know that Robert Kiyosaki also endorses multi-level marketing as a great place to start. And if I think back to my multi-level marketing career, the reason I got into it is because I could do it alongside my existing job at the time, like managing a supermarket. What do you think some of the benefits are for someone who wants to start a multi-level marketing or direct selling type business?
I'm going to duck that question a little bit to begin with in answering it.
Okay.
By saying that multi-level marketing is a business. One has to think of it as a business in exactly the same way as opening a retail store that might cost you £100,000-200,000 to set up shop, or a service-based business which might cost you 20-30K to set up shop. A multi-level marketing business is simply a business, much like a franchise, if you like, where
Right.
all hard work is done. So setting up a multi-level marketing, unfortunately, a lot of people come into it thinking they'll dabble with it.
Yeah.
And I think to be super successful, you have to come in all in and say, look, this is the vehicle I'm going to choose to build my future based on. So in answer to the question, I think multi-level marketing, there's a reason why it's the fastest growing subject on the planet at this moment. Nothing is growing at the pace that multi-level marketing is.
Yeah. Now, for me, one of the key things when I started my business 23 years ago was the training and support and stuff like that. And then conversely, networking, I hear a lot of startup conventional business people saying, well, they can't afford to invest in mentoring or training or coaching in the early years. What would you say to those people?
100%, you can't afford not to. You cannot afford not to learn how to make money, and you can't, and to develop the communication skills, aka sales,
yeah,
leadership skills, management skills, how to inspire people to grow and flourish. These are the things that must be invested in if you're to be the ultimate success that you are. Now, I left school at 15. Wasn't particularly proud of that, but the dyslexia, the ADD meant I hadn't really gone for several years, and I was never going to get a job because, rightly or wrongly, especially now I'm in my late 50s, I look at the education system much like Kiyosaki, which is, you know, you go to university, you spend 30, 40, 50 grand on your university education, and essentially what are you doing? What you're doing is you're looking to get a piece of paper, your qualification, that's going to get you an interview.
yeah.
So you're investing 30 grand to get an interview. So why would you not invest a few £1,000s to get the life skills and the business skills to be successful in your own right? So for me, I think that just like opening a store where you might have to invest, you know, tens to 100 odd £1,000s, I think in starting any business, even multi-level marketing, which has a low cost of entry, to not put the monies aside to invest in your personal business development is a mistake. and it can be a costly mistake, because
Yeah.
the next thing you know, you spent 3 or 6 or 18 months doing it, you're really not earning much money from it, and it's only because you haven't invested in yourself. And that's really what the training gets you. It gets you personal involvement, where you're better able to build a business that works.
Yeah, and it's interesting you mentioned the low cost of entry, because again, a lot of the things I see on the network circuit, if you like, is underfunded businesses. People starting a business, they haven't really got enough money. Maybe they've left the job, so they haven't got that cash flow. Is there anything a start to it? If you wanted to raise capital and go down that route as opposed to MLM, is there anything out there at the moment that you're aware of that can help people get going?
It's actually a fallacy that it's difficult to raise money. It's not difficult to raise money, and it's not difficult to find the money to personally invest, even on an MLM level. We'll say even on an MLM level, but I think if you're going to start a business that you want to pay all of your bills and give you the work-life balance that you want, there's a certain investment needed in order to do that. Now, the low cost of entry in multi-level marketing means that you may actually start that business for as little as X number of hundreds of pounds. But I think you ought to look at maybe putting £3,000 or £4,000 or £5,000 together, which I think is accessible. You can raise that if you really want to. That's the question. If. But I think if you make the decision that you want to, raising the money is not that difficult. Nor is it difficult to raise money if you want to start a traditional business. There are tons of places, from the banks, if you can't get through the banks, which they are difficult to work with. But again, if you get a mentor who knows how the system works, they can help you put the business plan together that you can leverage to get funds from a bank. Or there's lots of second-tier funders out there, Funding Circle and all manner of financial outlets that you can go and get that from. But again, it's a case of investing in a mentor that's going to help you to piece all of those parts of the jigsaw together so that you can fund it. But you're 100% right. Last year, and I'm going to talk 2018 stroke 2019. If you have a look at the Companies House, what you'll see is 386,000 businesses were formed, i.e. new limited companies.
Okay.
But 340,000 were dissolved. And if you go back over the last 10 years, they're not the same companies that are dissolved, but very roughly 80% of all new registrations dissolve over a period of 3 to 5 years. Why do so many businesses fail? Because those that start the businesses are super passionate about what they do. They are great at what they do because they're passionate about it, but they're underfunded. And they're underfunded because they didn't do the work in the first early days to get enough resources to do the cash flow forecasts, to get the monies on board. And that, I solidly believe, Lloyd, is the reason why the attrition ratio within multi-level marketing is so sky high. It's because most of the it's a sweeping statement, but most of the multi-level marketers play the numbers game. If I talk to so many and I get so many on board, as opposed to actually looking for the right people to build a team with. Because you've been in network marketing for a long time and you've become very successful, and you only become successful out of being an inspirer, someone who is a leader and can spot people who have that inner desire to build the business. Everybody says they want to be a millionaire, but there's a whole ton of people that want to sit on a Monday morning and watch Jeremy Kyle. It really is a case of how badly do you want it? Network marketing, I really do believe, is a phenomenal way of building a business that can segue you out of employed to self-employed. And if you have, you know, other passions, you want to get into the property business or you want to get into whatever other field, that's a great springboard because of that low cost of entry. But it does take all in as a mentality.
Yeah. It's interesting because one of the things I always do is I look at profiles. So I look at profiles of people who are successful, and then I try and match those profiles. And one of the profiles is having that entrepreneurial mindset and a bit of a free spirit. But if I look around sometimes from a conventional point of view, many times people in the conventional business sort of look down their nose and poo-poo network marketing and say, you know, it's not a real business. And I'm sort of using you here to get some inside info because they never tell me why they do that. But why do you think, you know, conventional business people look at MLM like that? And do you think they're making a mistake?
I think the guys that run the conventional businesses that are the kind of guys that would look down their nose at multi-level marketing are probably not the larger businesses. They're probably the characters that go to networking meetings.
Right.
And when they go to networking meetings, they're kind of looking for, obviously everyone who goes networking, they're looking for people to do business with. They're looking to make the connections that turn into opportunities, that turn into business. And of course, the network marketers are not buyers, by and large, of what it is that they're selling.
Yeah.
Let that be, I'll say accountancy, but funny enough, a lot of MLMers don't have an accountant.
No.
Yeah, it's because they've not built the business to that level yet. So of course, I think with those guys, they see them as people who just want to sell their products or services, but don't buy anything. So I think that's where that disconnect comes from. And I think it really, to be honest with you, is a little bit of the fault of network marketing. Okay. In that you don't have that many characters that hold themselves with a bit of gravitas, that, you know, are clearly visible as people who have made a success of it. I mean, there's your good self, there's Toby Acton. I can probably get to maybe 5 on a hand, and then I, you know, Davina Farah are people that I've seen that have been on the circuit for maybe, you know, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 years and are still there. Well, if they're still there, they're making money still.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, you also see that huge attrition rate. So the people that come in and, you know, whether they're a UW or Forever Living or Isogenics or whatever those are. So I think, again, it kind of comes back to the industry. The sector doesn't always do itself a good favour in that respect.
No. In your book that you've written in How to Build a Business That Creates Profit, one of the things that jumped out at me was that the saying you had that success is always reverse engineered. What do you mean by that?
Well, I'll give you a bit of an example. The very first business we had was a cycle shop.
Right.
And this was in my teenage years. And we were only running for about 18 months, 2 years. And a local company that had about 3 or 4 cycle shops bought us out to get rid of us because we were taking business from them and so on. So the interesting thing for me at that time was that I'd really enjoyed starting the business. I'd really enjoyed building the business, but as soon as it was operating, I kind of lost interest. I guess that must have been the ADD in the teenage years. But it was a pivotal moment because I figured, this is interesting. Why don't I just start a business, build it up, have the enjoyment and the adventure of that, and then just sell it?
Yeah. So
the next business that I started, I reverse engineered. And then from that point onwards, that's all I've ever done is, so, well, okay, I think in business, you've only got one of 2 businesses. It's either a lifestyle business or it's a business that you're going to sell at a certain point in time. Regardless of which one of those it is, I think it's wise to get a visceral vision in your mind of when that business is exactly where you want it. if you can get that visceral vision where you can see it, touch it, taste it, know in your mind what it is to have the business to where you want it, it becomes a lot easier, because then you say, well, okay, so what's the first milestone? What's the second milestone? How will I know when I'm halfway? So the reverse engineering helps you most when you get to that first big challenge. Everybody has that first big challenge where they think either, oh, I still can't make it make money, or you get whatever challenge come out of left field. That is when a lot of people give up.
Okay.
But if you've got that visceral vision of the long-term goal, this challenge is just an obstacle on the way to getting there. And then it becomes easy, because if this just is a hiccup, it's a block, it might be a 6-foot wall, but it's a wall I'm going through, over, around, or under, because I'm fixated on the end goal.
Yeah.
And that in of itself is what helps you to override the challenges and get where you want to go.
Yeah, yeah. I think it's similar to the saying, start with the end in mind, which I can't remember if that was Stephen Covey or John C. Maxwell, but it was one of those sort of those sayings. So
there's a book called The Richest Man in Babylon. It was in that.
Oh, was it? Okay. I knew I'd recognise it from somewhere. But we've seen recently, in recent years, the start of what they call the gig economy. You've got people like Uber, we've got people like Airbnb, and people generally doing that type of thing. And then 2020 has been this massive work from home exodus, which, you know, I don't think we're going to see that totally reversed, because working from home has got so many different sort of like benefits and stuff like that. Going forward, do you see a family now working in that they may have, you know, one full-time job, maybe 2 full-time jobs, and then, you know, a side hustle, if you like, something that they're also doing to create some extra income? Is that type of thing here to stay, do you think, or do you think we'll go back to right, we're just doing PAYE and that's it?
No, 100%. We're in a transition mode. If you look at, if you just really take the last 300 years, believe it or not, it's only 300 years since the printing press came out.
Okay.
All right. So the printing press came out 300 years ago. Then we went to manufacturing 250 years ago. Then we went into computers came out in the, 60s, 70s and what have you. So the speed of change in a connected society is getting faster and faster and faster. And with the speed of technology gaining at exponential rates, it will never be what it was.
Yeah.
So it's funny, I was talking to my mother recently and she said, oh, it's not like it used to be. And I said, yeah, Mum, but your mum said it wasn't like it used to be. I don't think it's like it used to be, and our kids won't think it's like it. So the speed of change is changing. We have to adapt. Yeah. And with that change, if you look at where technology is going, I mean, you've got quantum computers that used to be science fiction. We're probably only 5 years away from quantum computers that can process information at a fraction of the speed of the fastest computers that are there today. Automation, even in the food sector, is getting faster and faster. What that all means is that there will be less and less jobs because technology will overtake those jobs. And this is why you started to see the likes of Uber and Airbnb taking complete sectors by storm and changing fundamentally how we interact with the world, how we go on holiday. I mean, if you look at the automotive industry, that's been stripped out of all recognition. We're probably only 5 or 6 years from being able to talk into your watch, call a car. You won't need a car anymore.
Yeah.
So if you don't need a car, then, and they're all electric and they all plug in, now you don't need mechanics and technicians. So the gig economy, if you take all of that situation, that helicopter view of where humanity is and where it's going,
yeah,
how are the millions and millions going to earn money? Gig economy. And I think if you look at LinkedIn, you can really see that vividly, because LinkedIn started out as a CV site. It's now a site to market your talents. So if you're an IT guru, I think you become a freelancer. I'm doing a lot of work in the recording industry and post-production with one of my clients, and she's seeing that all the post-production guys they don't work for companies anymore. They're freelancers and they're on project work. And this is why I think multi-level marketing is going to go to the roof. And I have looked at it to see, well, how much energy can I throw into that? Because again, I don't think you can dabble with it.
No.
I don't think you can really call it a little side hustle and expect it to make money. You've got to throw the energy in. It's a business. So I think it's only going to grow, Lloyd.
Cool. So just sort of like wrapping up now. So there may be lots of people out there, especially in this situation, where they may be looking at dipping their toe in, looking at, unfortunately, maybe dabbling in business in stuff like that. But what do you think are the qualities that are needed to run your own business? I mean, whether it's, you know, network marketing, direct sales, or conventional, I always see that the ultimate thing is you need some sort of personality and some sort of, you know, life in you. But what would you say is your take, and what sort of qualities does a person need to run their own successful business?
I think the ability to block out distraction and to prioritize the things that are truly priority number one, priority number two. I think if you're to succeed in business, regardless of whether it's one type of business or another, it takes absolute focus in order to achieve. So you only become a great tennis player by practice. Just, you know, tunnel vision to become a great tennis player, football player, motor racing driver, and business person. That's what it takes is priority number one is the ability to focus. And certainly in the early years, it's to take risks, which is a difficult thing to process, because if you figure that the media for the last 20 odd years have been training us not to make a decision. For the last 20 years, you read these exposés that say, yeah, if you go and look at a car, don't make a decision there, have a look at other places. If you go to look at a house, don't make a decision. If you're going to have an insurance policy, you know, take 7 days to cool down. We've been programmed not to make decisions and to think about it. Well, that just slows everything down. So it's the ability to make decisions, it's the ability to prioritize and focus on that end vision and go all in on making it happen. Fantastic.
Well, John, this has been a fantastic little chat here. We have to do this more often. Thank you for your input and your insights. And maybe I'll leave the final word to you in terms of the current situation, the current crisis where we've seen the economy, you know, really take a battering. Where do you see the economy in the next 12 months?
I think we've got a little surge at the moment because there's lots and lots of money around in the business sector. They've all had their C-bills loans or bounce back loans. Right. There's lots of money sloshing around. I think construction industry is only going to get stronger over the next 5 years. And the construction industry is the underpin of the economy, because all those brickies and plasterers and what have you then go out and buy their 60-inch TV and so on and so on. So I think that the 2020s will be strong. Countering that, I think the next 18 months you're going to see mass unemployment. Okay. And as those guys come out, they're going to have to readjust and choose a new direction. And what you're seeing is there are two very different types of people. Those that are waiting to see what the government or what the company or what Brexit but basically are waiting, and those that are calibrating and plotting where they're going to go next. And you really don't want to be in the waiting crew. Now's the time. There's phenomenal opportunities. I think if you got in on the ground floor of a network marketing or any other type of business, you can make an awful lot of money over this next 18 months to 3 years. This is a window of true opportunity. And for those that choose to go all in, it can be life-changing.
Fantastic. Well, thank you very much, John. Hoping to see you very soon on the networking circuit, because networking is all about business and getting out there. And looking forward to more chats in the future. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Lloyd.